So to start off, I'd like to introduce Selina Madanat, who is currently a Master's for Architecture student at Politecnico di Milano, focusing on the environmental track. Her work particularly explores the relationship between design, sustainability, and fabrication, while using technology as a creative tool to develop architecture that is both socially and environmentally conscious. Selina, you can share your screen when you're ready.
Hello, just want to confirm if you can see my screen or not. All
We
right.
can see it.
All right, great. Hi everyone. Thanks for letting me go first as well, since I am 6 hours ahead currently. But so I'm not sure I'll be able to stick around for the Q&A, but I'm happy to be showing the portfolio. So this is the portfolio that I used to apply to the Politecnico. And while applying to the Politecnico, just a bit of background that there are certain tracks that you can apply for. So they have an architecture with a focus on urban design, architecture with a focus on environment, heritage, and interior design. My tracks that I applied for were heritage and environment, and my first choice was environment, and that's currently the track that I'm focusing on. So in my portfolio, you can see here, I start off with just a little blurb about me and like my background specifically in architecture, and then a really quick CV over here as well, followed by the table of contents. In this portfolio, there wasn't a specific page limit on the portfolio for the Politecnico. It was more just a file size limit. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to apply there. And in this portfolio, there are 6 projects. And I start off first with my thesis. So I specialize in technology at UFT. So I kind of want to say that my portfolio isn't necessarily the most traditional design portfolio, but it does have aspects of that alongside some of the more techie stuff, I suppose, that you would do in the tech stream. So in my thesis, I was focusing on sort of drawing on lessons as titled Lessons from the Vernacular, specifically Levantine vernacular construction, and learning from the techniques and strategies that were historically present in the area and adapting it to a contemporary model of construction with the main purposes of post-war and post-disaster construction in Beirut. Let's start off with the render and just a blurb over there about the project. And then we go into the site analysis alongside, since I was very much heavily focusing on environment, that comes up quite a few times within the thesis, but here's the analysis regarding that, and then like a more contextual built mass analysis. Then it goes into the design logic, and I had a model here that I designed on the right side. And then now we get more into the design strategies, and specifically what I drew on from the historical vernacular. There's a little case study images that I took from the research portion of the thesis, just on the top left hand, and then some of the strategies on the bottom left, and some sample floor plans on the right side, since they don't all fit in the portfolio. And then I should mention that the final product of this thesis was a mid-rise residential apartment, just to mention that. And then you have some more renders showcasing like daylight and circulation, and talk about the ventilation here and how that's from the Levantine construction and strategies there. And then how it worked with the sunlight and rain. And then going more into insulation and heat gain and some traditional and kind of like how the wall technology and details was adapted to that. And then just some more nice photos to cap it all off. Okay, and then the next project was a group project that was formerly what ARC 380 was. It was a tectonic timbers class, but now it's changed, but at the time it was. And basically the point of this project overall was to develop our own tectonic timber structure or tectonic timber system and adapt that into a structure. And I mean, you'll see as we go on. And our project was the Eagle's Nest Lookout, in which we created a lookout bridge in Great Madawaska, overlooking the cliff face to bring you closer, not just to nature, but also to the sky and where the eagles would be occupying the space there. And here we have the tectonic system there, some sketches, and then some diagrams about how the system worked and the different kinds of joints that were involved in that construction. And you can start seeing here how the technological aspect of my background comes into play. And then, okay, this shows up a little weird on the screen because this PDF is meant for print. So the grid would typically be much lighter than it's appearing right now, but this is an exploded axonometric of how a chunk of the structure comes together here. So we have the structural assembly there. And then we have some like site plans and elevations there. And then we have some pictures of the actual fabricated, like CNC fabricated joints, and then a little site model over here. Okay, and this was a part of my work that I completed at DRIP. I was at the firm GH3, which is on Ossington Street. I don't know if you know about it. And my work was very specifically focused on landscape and native plants. And this was actually like an additional project I did with my extended time at the firm. But the main work here was to focus on how we can best optimize site analysis and how we can best optimize plant clumpings within a site based on the amount of shade it would receive. This was very much like a beta type version of what could have been a full optimization process. So this only focused on matching the best native species to each other and the shading conditions on site. And this kind of, so the way I developed this was through a grasshopper file. And obviously you shouldn't put like your whole grasshopper script onto your portfolio. So I did my best shot at creating sort of a visual diagramming of how the grasshopper script flow would work, how first you would begin with a site simulation to determine the shading, as you can see at the bottom right, and then shading in like sunlight hours, and then you would do a physical reevaluation of the topography of the site and would model certain natural plant clumpings. And then based on the work that I did at GH3, which was to create a massive native species database, you would then determine the most appropriate planting groups. And this kind of takes you through the whole process of that. And then here we have some drawings and renderings that I did of the final kind of landscaping plan, I guess, that was on this project. And this was a project that GH3 was working on at the time. I think they're still working on it. It's been a few years. But yeah, so I was taking one of their projects and applying this system that I developed onto it. So far in the portfolio, we've had a more residential-based design, a tectonic-based design, and a landscape design. And I think that's something that the Politecnico appreciates, like seeing a wide range of stuff. And especially because I was applying to heritage and environment, we see the heritage aspect of the first project and then environment kind of sort of spread out throughout, but very much in the first one and the second one. And these were my three strongest projects, I would say, at the time. And then going forward, this was a little group competition that I did after my time at UFT. I won't get into too much detail, but it was a little tiny house competition, just some nice drawings over there and some nice renderings. I'm not gonna go too much into that, but yeah. And then this is for some work that I was doing at the time, just residential representation, just to show my rendering ability. And all of this stuff was more specifically things that I had designed for the company that I was working at. So that's why I included it in my portfolio at the time. Just to show that I can do more than just timber tectonic structures. I can also do the traditional architecture stuff. And then finally capping it off with the fabrication project, which was Aeolian Soundscape, which I was working on with Professor Nick Hoban and John Minion at the time. You might have seen it on campus maybe a few years ago. But yeah, so my main role in this project was CNC fabrication and the KUKA arm fabrication and on-site construction. So here are images documenting that process and how it all went down. So this sort of added the not just design aspect of my background to my portfolio, but also showed that like I have on-site and like digital fabrication experience, especially since that was such a big part of my time at UFT and my background. And yeah, and that was my portfolio.